In amongst the ships being built at Barrow at the start of the 20th century, a very different kind of craft was also taking shape. Inside Yacht Shed Number 1, a pioneering project was nearing completion, something that was to become a familiar sight in the decades that followed. On the 2nd of October 1901, with no launching ceremony and very few photographs, the first Royal Navy submarine emerged. Built under licence, Holland 1 was regarded as experimental and potentially a one-off. 125 years later, Barrow continues to construct the UK's submarines. Coming up, we'll meet those who build them, commission them, and have spent several decades in the silent service. Welcome to this special edition of Northern Lights. Underhanded, unfair and damned un-English, Admiral Sir Arthur Wilson VC, the controller of the Navy, is said to have had little time for the new craft taking to the seas around the world in the 1900s. While Britain was not the first country to develop submarines, the Royal Navy kept close tabs on what was to become the kind of strategic technology an island nation needed. Holland 1 was quickly followed by more, and by the time World War I broke out, the yard in Barrow was busy. 64 submarines were launched between 1914 and 1919. The Second World War saw another 90 launched, as the submarine age became very much part of life in Furness. The silent service attracted public admiration because of the harsh conditions faced by submarine crews. And as the Cold War developed, new nuclear-powered boats joined the fleet. Ian Loftus spent 35 years in the Royal Navy.
I was doing maths, engineering, science and economics A-levels because in the back of my mind I had the idea of perhaps a business career in engineering rather than just purely being an engineer. But then in the spring of 75 there was a full-page spread in the Sunday Times magazine, full-colour spread, picture of a frigate bouncing in the waves off Iceland from the Cod Wars, advertising the Navy career for an engineer. And at that time, the way ahead for me seemed to be more the sort of, I suppose I was looking ahead to the digital age, which hadn't quite arrived then, but having got the place at university, I put in to join the Navy in January 76, did my Admiralty interview board between the 10th and 12th of March 76, and on the 28th of April I walked in through the gates of Dartmouth. Wow. So I barely had time to draw breath, but there I was. And then you embark, 3 years for a degree, but mixing a lot of Navy time in that Navy training, both engineering and normal. And then in the end into another 3 years or so of submarine engineering training, including the nuclear reactor course. So although I joined in April 76, I actually got to my first submarine in January 83, and that was HMS Churchill. I grew up originally in a back-to-back mill house, 2 up, 2 down, toilet at the bottom of the garden. Not what you might expect, as you say, when you look at just the black and white print of the grammar school and then on to university. Having had a bit of experience through uni time at sea in both surface ships and submarines, you are so much closer and, you're enclosed by it when you're in a submarine. What drew me to it was the fact that you needed to know everything about the submarine. As a marine engineer, I couldn't say, I don't know how sonar works, that's for the weapon engineers. To do your Part 3, to qualify to wear that badge, you had to know every bit, every valve from one end of the submarine to the other. And, that's why it takes time to do that. And I like that. And I like the idea of, fine, I was an engineer officer, but I watch kept on the nuclear plant just the same way as the Stokers did and all the guys that I got to know over the years. The thing that, again, reflects why I enjoyed it, Sharon and I have known each other 11 and a bit years, been married for 3, but within the first year Sharon came with me to an HMS Churchill reunion in Bristol, and she said she was just gobsmacked because it was like we'd only seen each other a few weeks before, but it was 30 years for some of us.
Today in Barrow, the next generation of nuclear submarines are being built. Commander David Bean Crosby is the current captain at HMS Agamemnon, the 6th of the Astute class, and is also captain of Achilles, which will be the final class member.
Been in the Navy since 1988. I've been at sea for each of the last 5 decades, which is quite a long time. I've had the privilege of commanding 5 Astute class. So my first command was Artful. So I took her through generation into operations, then Astute generated her ready for carrier strike support. Then I said I'd come and do 1 in build, so I came and brought boat 5 out in Anson and took her through her initial sea trials. Foolishly said I'd do another 1, so I came and did Agamemnon, and now I've been asked to just do the last one, and mainly to provide continuation for me about what I enjoy doing, but also to provide continuation to BA and the wider enterprise as someone who's been there, seen it, done it, and help get through the particular challenges of the last of class, which is a unique challenge in our own.
I suppose when you think about the changes that have been in submarines, we're here to talk about an anniversary, which is itself, I think, remarkable. It's all well over a century now, but to the untrained eye, a submarine hasn't really changed shape. It does broadly the same kind of thing, but I suppose it's these are light years away from even the last class, I suppose, before Astute.
I think absolutely. I'd say in one way it isn't, and the way it isn't is that the ship's company all rely on each other, from the captain right down to the most junior person on board. You all rely on each other to do a job, whether that was the same in Holland 1 back in October 1901, right up to where we are now with Agamemnon and Achilles, and then the future with Dreadnought and SNA coming online. It's not a single person's job, it is a team job, and I'm just fortunate enough to be to the head of those teams. Submarine warfare is exactly what it says in the tin. It sounds really sneaky and stealthy and exciting, and it is for certain periods. For other periods, it's long periods of boredom, how you maintain and keep your team focused for extended periods at sea, looking for whatever challenge you're put to do. I would say back in the early days, First and sort of Second World War, I think even Second World War, Churchill said the biggest threat he faced was the U-boat threat. So the Germans, and even then, they were sort of more submersibles, so they would find a target, dive and attack it. Whereas nowadays, in the advent of nuclear, we can go around the globe. We can operate from the ice caps to the Middle and Far East. We can operate at various depths. We can provide so much for defence in terms of strategic defence with the nuclear CASD, or the attack submarines with the Astute class that are built here in Barrow.
In Barrow, over 13,000 people now work building Astute and Dreadnought class submarines. The engineering team at BAE Systems work closely with the service personnel who will eventually crew the boats. Brian Hurley is a manufacturing director in Barrow and now trains the apprentices who will follow in his footsteps. As you can hear in the background, there's lots happening here at BAE in Barrow. We're just next to the SASC, which, go on Brian, describe what it does. What's the purpose of this building here?
So the SASC is the Submarines Academy for Skills and Knowledge. So this is where we take our new intakes, our apprentices and some of our new starts into the business and familiarise them with submarine builds. So we give them experiential learning off the submarine before we actually take them into the platforms and start work.
So this must be a bit of a change from what life was like when you joined. I imagine the fact you got this air-conditioned, nice-looking building. I guess it was on the job, wasn't it?
Very similar to, actually. So I started in 1985, and as you used to go across the bridge to Walney Island, there was 2 training centres, one either side of the bridge. So I did have the benefit of going through a training centre back in the day, and really thankful for the skills that gave me at that time. The skills that the people that build the submarines hasn't changed in decades, or numbers of decades anyway. We still install pipes, valves, steelwork to the same methodology that we did back in the 1950s and 60s. So those artisan skills are still alive and kicking in Barrow Shipyard.
What was the appeal for yourself, and what was the draw to come to the shipyard?
I think there was a couple of things really. I mean, back in 1985, the shipyard was the main employer, so it was taking in the same number of apprentices that it probably does now, close to 500 each year. I have a long family legacy in the shipyard. My father worked here for at least 40 years. His father worked here for at least 30 years, and then his father worked in the shipyard as well. So it was really a no-brainer when it came to, you've been offered a job in the shipyard, that's what we're going to go and do. So, and thankfully, I've had a great career from it.
We've just been looking through a book which catalogues some of the kind of major highlights of the shipyard, from surface ships back to submarines as well, and you were saying you've been involved in quite a few?
Yeah, so I started work with the Trafalgar class submarine, so not far from where we are now. We used to build and commission the submarines in this dock, so I've seen that changed to the opening of the Devonshire Dock Hall, where we currently build the submarines, and we have done for that last 40 years. But then through the late 90s and into the early 2000s, working on surface boats as well. So again, transferable skills from submarine build into surface build, and then back into submarine build.
And yet, to the untrained eye, to people who just look at submarines, the shape hasn't changed that much. As you said before, the kind of skills you need, the pipe work and that, you still need those as well. But given that, I think I've read about the fact that the technology in Astute, for example, is so high end. It's more than the space shuttle was. Technology has moved on. Has that become more of a challenge to deal with that and make sure you can future-proof submarines?
Yeah, well, undoubtedly, some of the trade groups that we use, primarily electrically, their skills and the requirements that are set on them have increased, but this is what things like the Skills Academy do for us. They allow us to train the team off-board on some of those niche skills that we need to fulfil our requirements.
I was on a new ferry in Scotland quite recently, and there isn't a wheel now. They have joysticks because of these German kind of propellers underneath. So the skill isn't to be able to manage the wheel. It's quite like a PlayStation.
Yeah, absolutely. I did find it quite strange when I went on a submarine for the first time and saw a joystick to control the rudder and hydroplane. So, the technology has changed. But then if you think about it from a build environment, our interface now with the machinery we use is more of a touchpad. It's more iPad style working. So what we're having to train our workforce in now is that digital interface with the machinery that they use.
Amazing. I've just been chatting to Bing Crosby, who I know you work with very well.
Yes.
What's that relationship like between building and delivering to somebody? He is your customer, isn't he? He's the person who'll be driving the submarine out in the future. How do you work on that? How does it work?
Well, there's got to be a real element of trust there between the two parties. If you think about this in broader terms, Bing's life is in my hands, or the work of the team in Barrow. So, I remember one of the first times I met him, he asked me, would I come to sea with him? And that wasn't do you fancy a trip out in my boat? It was more do you trust the quality that you and your team are building into that platform? And it was an absolute yes. And then the work that Bing does to extol what we do as a shipbuilder, and the work that he does in the community to build that relationship is fantastic. And we try and reciprocate by looking after the Navy crew whilst they're here and giving them the best experience that they can, and giving them access that they perhaps won't get in other parts of the Royal Navy.
And I suppose passing on that message to the apprentices who are starting out at the very start of their career in the SAS just behind us here. That's what you're doing now, isn't it? Making sure that they understand as you do.
Yeah, so current role is looking at the curriculum that we provide to our current intake of apprentices, making sure that they have a great learning journey through their apprenticeship to come out with the skills that we need for building the submarines of the future. What we've tried to do is, with working with the Royal Navy and the crew of each of the boats, getting them through our Skills Academy and making that link, that bond between the men and women that serve on our submarines and the work that our workforce do, and just the criticality of it to them. And it's great to hear the stories that Bing will tell about some of the stuff that the submarine gets up to, and making that link between I've fitted that pipe or I've installed that cable to this is a national asset that goes and does wonderful things for us. So it's making that tangible link between that day-to-day task that we do and the end product and what it does in service.
There can't be many jobs where you have that relationship with the customer. I mean, most people build things and they're sold, and whoever buys them, and that's it. You never meet the customer, whereas with you're spending years, aren't you, working alongside them, because that's the nature of the job, isn't it?
Yeah, so part of the build of the submarine is we'll install systems and get them commissioned, and then ask the Royal Navy to maintain and upkeep them. So they're intrinsically linked into the build environment from probably 2 to 3 years before we launch a submarine, and then incrementally they'll take over the responsibility of the boat. So you want that relationship, that trusting relationship that you have with the crew to grow right the way through that time.
So it must be a funny feeling when you see the submarines finally leave, because they don't come back in this day and age. Now, once they've gone, they've gone. It must be an odd feeling. It's like losing a child, isn't it? I suppose you're kind of leaving home.
I don't think. Well, yeah, I guess you could equate it to leaving home, but I don't think they ever really leave. I've been the lead manager on a number of boats, and you still look out for them. You still look out for what they're doing. So there is still that link, but it's always massive pride when you see one go under the bridge or down the channel, wherever you go to see it leave Barrow, the hairs stand up on the back of your neck once you've been involved in something truly special. And you don't get many opportunities through a submarine's life cycle to celebrate the achievements of the build team. So yeah, they're special days.
You've been involved for quite a while. Any highlights, anything that really sticks in your mind as something that is a real golden moment?
Well, I've had a number. I think a couple really stand out. I was the trials manager for HMS Bulwark when she left Barrow. So Bulwark was the last surface boat to leave Barrow, and I was on the bridge of Bulwark when she went round Peel. And to see the crowd at Peel Island and on Roe Island, cheering and waving, was a moment I'll never forget. It really gets me even now when I'm thinking about it. And of the Astute class submarines, I was the boat manager on the second of class, so that's my favourite submarine in that class of boat.
From Holland 1 through to Achilles, names like Superb, Upholder, Trafalgar, Turbulent, Dreadnought and many more have become part of Barrow's history. 125 years on, submarines are set to be built here for generations to come, for people like Commander David Crosby.
When I joined, I had no idea what I was joining, to be fair. I was born and bred in Banbury in Oxford. I passed my GCSEs and didn't know where I was going in my life, so I decided at 16 years old I'd run away and join the Navy. I did, and at the end of 2.5 months training, I was offered a couple of jobs, one of them being a submarine. Never been on a submarine. Thought I'd do that for a little while and see what happens, and I was immediately taken by the camaraderie, the teamwork. My first boat was Torbay, which was on her just starting her second commission, having left Barrow a while before. But even then, the camaraderie and the team was all related back to what they'd done in Barrow and how they'd built each other. And I think it's really key that at early stages of a submarine, it's just like a family. If you set the right standards, you set the right ethos, and you set the right mentality, that stays with that boat and that team all the way through, whether it's a different captain, whether it's a different command team, whether it's a different people, sort of mentality and ethos that stay there. And that was the attraction.
It's not for everyone, is it? Being underwater, not seeing the sea. If you're a mariner, full stop, you enjoy by nature, don't you? Seeing the coast and the sea, all the rest of it. But if you're a submariner, that obviously you don't. It's very much in your mind, isn't it? Trying to visualise what's going on around you, especially in warfare situations. So I guess you've got to be a special person to be able to put up with that.
I think it's a little bit of that. I think there's a lot of it is being just a personable person that you can get on with each other. We train our own right from the very bottom, and I start off right at the very bottom. So we train our own all the way through. We look after each other. It is one big family, and by extension, and we look after our sailors' families as well. So for me, with Agamemnon at the moment, with 150 in the ship's company, I class that as a family of about 500 people. I've got direct involvement with pretty quickly, and that's beside my own family. So it is a lot, but we help people through life challenges, we help people through their education processes to advance, and I think that's the appeal of the submarine, is actually you can advance pretty quickly through your naval career.
And I guess average age is fairly young as well, so they're all going through, I guess, weddings, divorces, kids, things like that.
Absolutely. I joined my first boat at 16 when I was captain of Artful. I have a good story where there's one area on board we have two people, one in first watch, one in second watch, to do the same job. One of them was nearly 60. And the other one was just 20, but they did the same job, and it was great for mentoring because a 60-year-old could mentor the young lad, but the young lad was so good on the computers and the systems he was using that he was still teaching that 60-year-old all those years ago. So really good. You're always learning. I'm still learning. It's fifth command, and I'm still learning. And as systems and sensors change, the submarine ethos stays the same. The actual role of the submarine stays the same, but how we can conduct it slightly changes. I mean, it's our role to work with BAE and the wider enterprise to use these sensors now in the test environment to then take them into an operational environment and really exploit what we can do.
I'm just conscious we're about the same height, so you're about 6 foot. Being in the submarine, imagines things to avoid. Have they got better in terms of less pipes to avoid valves, to duck out of the way of things like that? Are they more comfortable now than they were when you joined?
Well, I'm more comfortable. I'm the only person with my own cabin on board, but it is only a cabin. There's only a sink. There's nothing else. There's nothing luxurious, and it doubles up as an office as well. So they have got a bit better. There is a bit more space as we try to do stuff, and as we look towards the future with the follow-on SSNs in particular, there's some real design changes there which will make things better. One of the first people I met in my first boat in Torbay in 1988, he was a massive bloke, and I said hello to him, and he turned around and I said, "Where do you work?" And he went, "The lower level of the engine room." This bloke was a Navy second row rugby player, so you can imagine how tall he was and how big he was, and he just laughed and worked down there. So you get used to the conditions and where you are.
And what about the future? What's the future hold to you? You're obviously looking after the current team, the current class as well, but what's your vision, what's your hopes?
I hope for the submarines they get out and they run as well. Anson's done fantastically, and that was my last boat before this one. Well, I can't go into what she's done. All I can say is she has done fantastically since leaving Barrow. Hopefully Agamemnon will follow suit, and then we'll get Achilles out and do that way. And then I'm either going to retire or do a couple of days, maybe working elsewhere. But I think 5 decades of being in submarines is probably enough for most people, and I think 5 commands could be seen as quite greedy, but I think my wife and kids deserve a bit of time as well.
And while he may now be retired, Ian Lofthouse says he still feels part of a service he devoted 35 years of life to.
It may come and go in titles, but I think, you look at the submarine programme here, there is a programme of work out for, been in the mid-2020s, you're looking at another 20, 30 years at least. Yeah. So unless something huge changes across the world, and looking around the world at the moment, it's such an uncertain place, I can't see what would shake that. I think from being the ungentlemanly scoundrels that we were, I think we probably still are. Once a submariner, always a submariner. So although you've got brackets retired after your name, you're still a submariner at heart. I think people are beginning to understand some of the work that's been done over the years.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Northern Lights. You can read more about the anniversary of submarine building in Barrow in Business Crack, and check out our interviews on Cumbria Crack's YouTube channel too. Thanks for listening.